Welcome to our explainer on Frantz Fanon's masterworks. Today we're jumping right in to look at the historical trauma of colonialism, but through a very specific and honestly incredibly revealing lens. We are going to adopt the empathetic viewpoint of a post-colonial researcher and clinician to diagnose the profound psychological damage inflicted by colonial structures. You see, Fanon wasn't just a brilliant theorist. He was an actual practicing psychiatrist. And to truly grasp his work, we have to look at colonialism not just as some abstract economic or political system, but as a severe, literal psychological pathology.
Okay, let's quickly run through our clinical diagnostic arc for today. 1. The doctor and influences. 2. The psychoexistential complex. 3. Epidermalization of inferiority. 4. A case study on the white gaze. 5. The dual neurosis. And finally 6. Decolonization and humanism.
Starting with Section 1, the doctor and influences. Let's examine the man himself and the unique diagnostic tools he used to understand the human mind.
So, Fanon was born in 1925 in Martinique, which was a French colony, and his early life was massively influenced by his mentor, Aimé Césaire, and the Negritude movement. That really sparked his foundational ideas on black identity. He actually fought for the Free French in World War II, studied psychiatry in France, and eventually found himself working in a psychiatric hospital in Algeria right in the middle of its bloody struggle for independence. And get this, he wrote his seminal first book when he was only in his mid-20s. He brilliantly used his own autoethnographic experiences, his actual lived reality, to bridge medicine, philosophy, and anti-colonial activism.
Now, what is really fascinating here is how cleanly Fanon contrasts and combines the major European intellectual movements of his time. On one hand, you have Jean-Paul Sartre's existential focus on self-construction and freedom. On the other, Jacques Lacan's psychoanalytic perspective on how our subjectivity is shaped by language and the gaze of the other. Fanon takes these distinctly Western frameworks and, well, he totally flips the script, using them to dissect the very colonial system that produced them in the first place.
Moving on to Section 2, the psychoexistential complex. What exactly is the core psychological condition Fanon is diagnosing?
If you literally only take away one thing for your exams, make sure it's this definition. Fanon reveals that the pathology of colonialism isn't just about stolen land or economic theft. Fundamentally, it's a psychoexistential complex. It severely, deeply damages the human mind. Colonialism acts like a disease that distorts all human relations, forcing the colonized to internalize this profound sense of inferiority, while at the exact same time trapping the colonizer in a pathological delusion of superiority.
Next up, Section 3, Epidermalization of Inferiority. Let's explore exactly how this pathology takes hold of the patient.
Fanon maps out the causal sequence of this colonial trauma almost like a physician tracking the spread of a virus. It absolutely always begins with Step 1, material economic oppression, poverty, exploitation, forced labor. But it doesn't stop there, right? It moves inward through internalization in Step 2. Then, we hit Step 3, which is a pivotal concept in Fanon's work, before finally locking into a rigid psychological inferiority complex in Step 4.
So, the crucial point in that chain is a term Fanon actually coined, epidermalization. He explains that the trauma isn't just absorbed by the mind, it literally gets attached directly to the skin. Epidermalization is this incredibly traumatic realization where the manufactured feeling of inferiority isn't just a societal issue anymore, it is physically mapped onto your skin color. It becomes visible, completely inescapable, and felt 24/7. It's his clinical explanation for why racism actually feels like a heavy physical weight.
Which brings us to Section 4, Case Study of the White Gaze. To truly understand this psychic violence, we need to step into the clinic and look at a specific instance of this trauma in action. I want you to treat this famous autoethnographic quote from Chapter 5 of Black Skin, White Masks as a severe trauma record. Fanon is recounting a train ride in France where a small white child points at him in innocent fear. And in that split second, Fanon writes that his humanity is instantly stripped away. He's no longer a brilliant doctor, a scholar, or even an individual. He is completely reduced to his skin color.
That single, seemingly everyday moment triggers what Fanon calls the white gaze. This gaze immediately turns a free, exploring human being into an objectified, frozen stereotype. Fanon describes feeling like that child's gaze loaded the entire weight of his race, the brutal history of slavery, and literally every societal fear of blackness squarely onto his shoulders. It is a perfect, devastating clinical example of psychological violence happening in real time.
And right here, we see the profound, traumatic symptom of disembodiment. Fanon explains that his normal bodily schema, that natural subconscious way we all navigate the world in our own bodies, is violently shattered. It's entirely replaced by a racial, third-person perspective. The sheer trauma of the gaze causes him to experience his own body as distorted, recolored, and totally alien. He's simultaneously experiencing himself, seeing how the white world views him, and carrying the historical burden of his ancestors all at once.
Now, moving to Section 5, the dual neurosis. Because as a clinician, Fanon notes that this disease doesn't just stop with the oppressed, it infects the entire societal body.
This sickness builds into what Fanon diagnoses as a dual neurosis. Yes, the colonized subject is enslaved by feelings of dependency, inadequacy, and a manufactured inferiority. But crucially, Fanon diagnoses the colonizer as well. He argues they are equally pathologically trapped in a neurotic need for dominance and superiority. Both sides are fundamentally sick. Neither is capable of relating to the other as a normal, healthy human being.
The really tragic symptom for the colonized subject within this neurosis is this deep, internalized racism. Because the colonial structure positions whiteness as the absolute only valid form of humanity, the colonized develop a desperate desire to put white masks over black skin. According to Fanon, this manifests in seeking white approval, altering the way they speak to sound more European, or even pursuing relationships not for actual love, but as a subconscious attempt to simply feel human.
Finally, Section 6, Decolonization and Humanism. Having diagnosed the pathology, let's look at the ultimate prognosis and Fanon's prescription for healing.
For your quick student revision, make absolutely sure you lock in these 5 clinical takeaways. The psychoexistential complex is the overall disease. Epidermalization is how economic trauma becomes physical. The white gaze is the trigger. Disembodiment is the shattering of the self. And the dual neurosis reminds us that the system corrupts everyone involved.
But despite this incredibly bleak diagnosis, Fanon's ultimate prescription isn't despair. The very last line of Black Skin, White Masks is this powerful plea. "O my body, make of me always a man who questions." His early roots in the Nigitude movement's cultural pride, combined with the brutal realities of the Algerian War, forged his final belief. Real healing requires refusing to accept those fixed racial stereotypes. It demands a radical decolonization of the mind and an active, restless pursuit of true humanism.
As we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final, provocative thought. Fanon was writing about the mid-20th century, sure, but those psychic wounds he diagnosed, they haven't entirely vanished. So how can we actively use Fanon's radical diagnostic tools to recognize and ultimately dismantle the systemic psychological violence that still lingers in our modern world? Something to really think about. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.